Hello, everyone. Thank you so much, and welcome to this session, which Namge and we are facilitating, and Namge is helping with this. And before I say anything, Namge, would you like to share something?
Oh. Um, Hi everyone, I'm Namgit Choden and I'm a global shaper and I'm also the Chen's friend. I'm happy to be organizing this event along with the Chen. Um, do you want me to talk about the climate stuff?
Sure.
Yeah, so this idea basically came about um, from a conversation that Dichan and I were having about our own experiences, because at the Hub, we've been running a project called the Bhutan Climate Futures Lab that focuses on climate literacy and giving young people the skills to be able to not only know the science of climate, but also around taking action. So we would go to these schools and institutions and teach kids skills like negotiation, coalition building, leadership, or even public speaking and how to think about breaking into a green career. And it so happened that Dichin spent a couple of years in the US um, as a fellow at the King Center. And I'm sure Dichin will share more about what that entailed. But we saw a very clear alignment in the work that we do because the principles that he's going to talk about today is very much about community action. And oftentimes, this is what we require to truly transform society at a structural, at a policy level. And it's not only climate, but I understand that those of you who are joining here are people who care a lot about social justice, social issues, and I hope that we can all find sort of a common space where we can learn and apply these skills. Thank you, Dichen. Over to you.
Thank you, Namge. Without you, this whole session wouldn't be possible. You've been supporting a lot. Um, yeah, as Namgi mentioned, we have been together working for Global Shaper Thimphu Hub, and I've been a member for quite some time. And additionally, I was also a community engagement exchange fellow at the King Center. Uh, it's uh, it was a fellowship for 3 months where uh, I'm, I'm sorry. Mm, Uh, Sorry about that. So I was a community engagement exchange fellow, and this was a U.S. State Department sponsored fellowship for which I traveled to the U.S. for 3 months, and I stayed in um, I stayed in a city in the south of U.S. It was Atlanta, Georgia, and I had as a Bhutanese, it was actually amazing because I did not think I'll ever get this opportunity amongst 130 something fellows from all over the world. I was chosen, and one other fellow from Mali, Africa, to work in an organization called the King Center. And King Center is the Martin Luther King Center's center, which was founded by his family in his memory and to keep alive his legacy of nonviolence and social change. So this is over the 3 months, I got to learn a lot, and some of the lessons were such profound message that I wanted to go back and share this with our, um, especially our friends and community back home. And this is my humble attempt to doing that. Let me get next slide. And yes, I was actually a community engagement exchange fellow. So this was a fellowship which brought community workers like myself and so many other from all over the world, almost 100 plus countries, to work in nonprofit organization all over the US. And while I was in the King Center, so I'll just touch upon the agenda for the day. So it's very convenient unveiling the non-violence principles of Martin Luther King Jr. in climate action, social engagement, and community engagement and social justice. Next. So, um, what would be non-violence? I think we've heard this a lot. Maybe, closer to ours is the whole movement that took place in India during colonial time. And this was, we attribute the Mahatma Gandhi's principle to, non-violence principle to Mahatma Gandhi, who was one such visionary person who actually pioneered the whole principle. And that actually encouraged so many other leaders, including Martin Luther King, to adopt the whole idea of non-violence resistance against oppressions, against colonialism. And the definition at the King Center for Nonviolence is very straightforward. It's simple. It's a love-centered way of thinking, speaking, acting, and engaging that leads to personal, cultural, and societal transformation. So, from here, one thing that is made clear to me is that violence is not always physical. It can be speech, it can be the way we think and the way we act, and the way we engage with others. And if we, adopt nonviolence there and make it love-centered, then this is not just going to lead to personal growth, right? But it's also going to help change cultures and can change societies and the world at large. Next slide. So this was something profound, actually. Before I move forward, I just wanted to show this small description about Martin Luther King. I think we all knew him. We all read about him. And the most famous thing that many people knew when I was back in school is his speech, I Have a Dream. And that is something, one of the first speeches that I've ever heard in my life. But I didn't have much knowledge about him until I went to work in the King Center, where I had to immerse myself in reading about who Martin Luther King was and what his work were. So just an information, like Martin Luther King was born in 1928, and he was assassinated in the year 1968. And he was a prominent American clergyman and civil rights leader. So Martin Luther King is actually a PhD. So he's one of the first, if not the only person who has a PhD and who is also became a pastor. So he's also known as Reverend Martin Luther King, and then in the academic world, he's called as Dr. King. And on top of that, he was a civil rights leader. So for his charisma and from what we know as being a great speaker, it was often the communities and in many places who actually chose him to be their leader for leading civil disobedience and civil justice movement. And in 1964, he was awarded a Nobel Peace Prize. Exactly 4 years before he was assassinated. And even to this day, he remains as a symbol of racial injustice, a fight against racial injustice. Next slide. And this is Mrs. Coretta Scott King. The most interesting thing about this person is that I never heard of her. I never knew who she was until I went there, because the center that I went to work at was founded by this person. And it turns out that this woman, who was the widow and the wife of Martin Luther King Jr., had played a crucial role in the whole civil rights movement. She was one who was always standing at the side of her husband, being his right hand, and she herself is a person who has so much of legacy, and right after Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated, this was really in the middle of a campaign that they were doing in the south of US. She was widowed, and then they had actually 4 kids. So the youngest of whom was just 5 years old, and not being just a mother who would feel down, heartbroken, and dejected, and then just give up. She said, "I will make sure that the legacy that my husband started would live forever. And then this is what, like for the next 70 years, she was working tirelessly. And she's the one who founded King Center, the Martin Luther Center for Nonviolent Social Change in Atlanta. And even in the 60s and 70s, this person, someone of color, was not afraid to speak about rights of other minorities, such as, like, she was a big supporter of the LGBTQ rights and spoke against discrimination based on sexual orientation. And next. And this is actually the King Center. It's located in Atlanta, Georgia, and this is where I was working. And I think in the picture is President Biden. So there's because the whole legacy is so strong, it has almost become our practice. Like whenever a new president is sworn in, the first state visit they do is to this area. And the King Center is not only a center for education, but it's also a place where, as you can see, those are that is actually the tomb, the memorial of Martin Luther King Jr. His remains are still there, and along with that, they renovated it. And when Mrs. Coretta Scott King, his wife, also passed away in 2000, early 2000, she was also placed alongside that tomb. And this monument actually stands as a symbol. The whole the actual station, the train station from where we have to get off to get there, is called a King Memorial Station. So like it's actually a really big, and then people uh, they're they're really proud of the legacy, and at the same time, it's a reminder for every one of us about what actually happened. Next. So if we can dive into the actual principles of nonviolence, as based on the philosophy of Martin Luther King, as a nonviolence practitioner, there are three evils in the world. It can be under the broad categories of three evils, and under racism, poverty, and militarism. And now we know that what would be racism, right? We've heard of it, but this definition is so broad that it includes uh, even topics like apartheid, ethnic conflict, anti-Semitism, ageism, which is discrimination against people based on their age, and even discrimination against disabled groups. And the word to describe that is called ableism. And I did not know about this word until I, started studying about the triple evils. And other things like poverty, which includes unemployment, homelessness, illiteracy, and militarism, which is obviously like war, imperialism, and even can be domestic violence, human trafficking, and all that. And now the principle believes that all of these things are interconnected and they are a vicious cycle. For example, racism in a prolonged period would actually cause poverty to a certain race of people, right? For example, racism in the US for many, many years have led to so many African American communities being on the margins and being experiencing poverty. And militarism, which is war, but at the same time, in smaller contexts, can be excessive force by police that are used against these different racial groups. They are all interconnected, and as the principle says, you need to be someone who's have to be fighting against all of them. And even if you fight against racism, you are in a way fighting against poverty and militarism, because they're all a vicious cycle, and it works that way. So the whole principle of nonviolence that I had to learn when I was back in King Center, it was like some 40, 50 hours of classes, and it's explored in depth. But here I'm just, but it can be also summarized into these 6 points. And the first one says that nonviolence is a way of life. And it says that nonviolence is not just a way for you to, that's something you practice in school, maybe, but not at home, or maybe something you practice when you're doing your activism or your campaign. No, it has to be something that you do every day, and it has to be nonviolence has to be a way of should be a vehicle of social change for you. And the second principle, which is beloved community. So beloved community is a word that was coined by a philosopher in the early 1900s, which talks about how a community that is free of poverty, racism, and militarism can become what we call a beloved community. And beloved community is something that has almost become a tagline for followers of Martin Luther King. And the third principle is it says, as a non-violence practitioner, you have to attack the forces of evil and not the person doing evil. Now, this is very interesting because we think that when the fight against racism is a fight against people who perpetuate racism, but the principle says that it's never the case. Even people who inflict racial injustice on others are considered a victim the of the system themselves, and your fight is against the system and not really the person doing it. And as a non-violence practitioner, when you're on your journey towards finding justice, if you are experiencing any form of suffering, right, even if it's loss of job or say getting beaten up when you are doing peaceful protests, you have to accept those suffering without retaliation, because that's how that's what the whole principle is about, right? And the fifth principle believes that nonviolence holds that one struggle is not with people but against unjust conditions. So your fight is against racism, but your fight is never about against white people, right? And the sixth principle is my favorite, and it says that the universe is always on the side of justice. So whatever you do, even if the worst may come, the ultimate thing would be that the universe will always be on your side for choosing justice. Next slide. Now we have actually the most practical form of the nonviolence principles and the whole philosophy and the framework that is coined by Martin Luther King, and his followers, is that there is distinctly like six steps which you can follow. So, for example, if you are a women's group who have to, who are faced with the issues of, say, you need to you're fighting against sexual harassment at workplace, or you are a climate activist, or you are a person of LGBTQ background, right? And you are, if you want to bring a desired social change, then you need to follow these six steps. The first step is called information gathering. So the very first step is called information gathering because a lot of the times it's seen that in a lot of social justice movement, people directly jump into that with no information or just half the information in their hand. And according to the principle, you have to have complete all the information, facts, and the knowledge. And we need to understand the issues from all sides. And the second step is to raise awareness. You need to, after all the information that you have collected, you need to use it to educate the public about your issue, whether be it about climate change, be it about social injustice. You need to inform the public as much as possible. And the third step is called personal commitment. As a non-violence practitioner, you need to embrace nonviolence and say that you would commit to nonviolence no matter what may come, and you will never engage in violence with anyone. And you need to make sure, if you're a leader, that your group is also doing the same, and they're also committing to nonviolence. And the fourth and the fourth step is called discussion and negotiation, because like I mentioned, nonviolence is not just about physical, but it's also about your speech. So you have decided whoever is perpetuating your opponent, right? That you want to have a resolution with, they have to come in terms with you. And that is only possible when you know, make sure that you sit down and then talk to them about these things, and then you tell them what are the injustices that have happened, because who knows, they may not have been aware about it from. And while doing that, you're being humorous, you're using intelligence, and you're using all the information that you have collected, you know, on your way, like, which is the first step, right? And by doing that, you're finding a common ground. And what the 6 steps of nonviolence actually says is that many a time your fight, you know, whatever, your fight will end at the 4th step, because you don't have to move forward from there. Because you know, other parties usually, if they are someone who is ready to listen to you and agree with what you say and then bring the desired changes, then it's something that you know, is done from there, and your work is done. But oftentimes what happens is, when it comes to racism, is something that's very systemic and something that's ingrained in society. For example, in the US, so many times there are systems where people were racist to a certain groups, like African American. And when Martin Luther King and his groups went to talk to them, they said that you know, they refused to talk to them. Actually, they refused to have discussions, and because of that, it led to you know, so it led to the 5th step, which is called the direct action. And direct action is you actually engage in peaceful protest. And protest is not the only way. You can do other things. For example, if your fight is against a business or a corporation or against an unjust system, then you know, as a community who is affected by that, you can actually boycott them. Like, if it's a business, you stop buying their services. Or if it's a if it's a corporation, you know, with many workers who are affected by uh, the injustice, then these workers could you know, stop going to work. And that actually is what uh, that's something that actually happened in the southern US. If I can give you an example, I think many of you must have heard of this person called Rosa Parks. She was a brave woman who was also a non-violence practitioner. And in the city of Montgomery, in the state of Alabama, there was a rule that buses, you know, the public transport in the buses, all the front seats would be reserved for white people, and all the and only the black people could only sit in the back. And she was someone who refused to do that, because she knew that, you know, it makes no sense. They have to pay the equal wage, I mean, yeah, equal fare for the transportation. And that led to one of the biggest protests in the US, which lasted about uh, almost 380 days. And this was a direct action, because Martin Luther King was called in to lead the whole campaign, and he followed all the 4 steps, you know, and it failed. And he and his followers had no other ways than to do that. Almost 15 months of protesting before, and then all the people of color, all the African American community are said to have totally boycotted traveling in public buses. They were carpooling, they were walking to school, and at the end, when even that didn't work, actually the Martin Luther King asked the, uh, the children of a local school to all come and join the protest. And it was like very young, small, like 12, 13-year-old protesting. Uh, and they were doing it peacefully. And the authorities have been said to have actually inflicted violence and beaten up these school children. And when the images of these came out on national media, people were actually shocked. And this was a whole reason why we do protest. Protest is not actually to, you know, protest is something that you do and and wait for other people to give in and change, but you're not going to react to that. But if the other party react, then the images of that actually come out on media, right? And then people are then forced to think about it, people who don't even care about your cause. And if I can move to the last step of nonviolence. So like I said in the principle, highlighting the principle that your nonviolence is and then fight against injustice is never about people, it's about system. So after you have been protesting, after you have boycotted the business, and then they agreed to have and a resolution is reached, then what do? Because you are clearly the winner here. You don't rub your win on other people's faces and then show your ego or attitude. Rather, you try to come to an understanding and heal any broken relationship, because even the other party is very much part of your community and you all have to live in harmony later. And this is the 6 steps. Let me get next slide. So we'll be doing a little group work if since I'm the only one speaking, and if you will be creating a breakout session, Namgi will be helping. So it's just a small exercise. So you'll be all put in a breakout room. You'll be invited to join a breakout room, and then if you're in the group 1, you can brainstorm on the case study in group 1. For group 2, you can brainstorm for that, and then try to see that the principles of, and especially the steps of nonviolence, how you can use it to discuss on these case studies and how you can solve these problems.
In these 2 groups, let me share the screen again. Here we are. So yeah, I it would be really exciting to hear about what went on in your groups, how you were able to approach the issue that's been given to you. So group 1, Pema, the money emo. So if you can share a bit of how you looked at the case here and how you were able to apply the principles.
Hello, sorry, Jana's also here with Pema. Hi, Namye. So yeah, there was 3 of us together, I think.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Hi, Jana.
Okay, hi. Does Money want to say? I think he had quite a few good points.
No, I think you would be better.
Less, so basically, Money, because we were discussing about, I think, nonviolence, right? And being a peer educator. So trying to start the SRHR club, we were thinking we could start off with mostly statistics. So trying to come up with statistics even directly related to the school. So if it's like a college, we were thinking we would have like a group where we could do surveys first, so that we can collect information, right? To basically understand what their understanding of SRHR is. And then we could break them up into 2 groups. One would be a control group and another would be a group where we actually just inform them about SRHR, even without having a circle, right? So then once we get the statistics that prove it's not really causing so much issues, but maybe the results might differ, but at least we would have immediate and direct information regarding the school itself and the people directly related to it. And then after that, we were thinking we could be a little bit more aggressive, and then maybe direct or have an event where different genders gathered in the same place for the whole night, or maybe for a couple of nights, and even then find out that there usually isn't as much sexual I don't know, activities as a lot of teachers and principals and the administration are usually worried about. And then we could probably get to inviting these teachers as well to try to figure out why they believe what they believe. So I think we got to that point first.
Any comments from Dichen?
Hi, Jana.
Hi.
Actually, yeah, actually, you really, approach it the way I, wanted because I remember SRHR clubs. This case study is actually, something that I experienced myself when I was in college. When we were in the second year, we actually started an SRHR club with Imbade, and it's called YPO Club, and those were the same problems that we face, like the college presidents, the college students, the deans, and not a single teacher actually wanted to support us because SRHR has the word sex in it. And then people tend to think that if we talk about sex, it's only encourage people to have more sex, And those were the misbelief. And no one actually thought about the other aspects about sexual health, and knowing about your sexuality and all that. It was a lot of problems. And now I think that if we were able to use these steps in a good way, we could have solved this whole problem, and also, be able to set up the club on time soon. And like I said, I think, yeah, it's very, information is really a weapon, right, in today's day and age. What if the president says, like, this promotes sexual activity, SRHR clubs, but you have the data to show that it doesn't, because you decided not to assume things based on what are the stereotypes and myths are, and you decided to dig up data and studies and then present it to him, and as an academic, he has to actually believe them, right? But first step is to make sure that you are an expert on this subject. That it's not true, and because you read enough literature, enough material to prove them, and what do you do? The second step is actually to raise awareness among public. Tell everyone that we're not able to do it because there's so and so misbelief and stereotypes in our society, and you're informing people, and then you're also telling them that why SRHR clubs are important, what are the benefits of that, right? And like I said, the third, non-violence means, like, just because you feel that resistance and that dismissal from the college management, you are not directly jumping onto saying that, now we will use harsh language. We will, we'll name and shame them. We will call them out. Remember, actually, non-violence is also about using love-centric language, right? And after doing that, you are maybe, asking the president or the teachers and the faculty members to have a meeting with you, right? And there you're talking and telling them whatever information you have gathered, whatever statistics and data you have, and you present it before them, and then tell them you want to start an SRHR club, and it has worked, and it has a lot of benefits. And like I said, fourth step, now things work usually. You don't have to move beyond that, because other parties, they usually agree to that, but if they're stubborn and if they don't, then you don't have any other ways then to move to direct action, which could be, I think protest is something that is not there culturally in our country, and it's also something that I would encourage, because we need to respect the culture, we need to respect Animeva. But there can be other forms. It can be social media, people. I feel like there's a lot of protests that happens on social media. We just don't know that it's protest. So many people calling out, and then, but everything peaceful. You don't use harsh language. You don't attack someone personally. You just stick on to, advocating for the issue, and you do it long enough for the college management to understand, and then think that, yes, we have to agree to this because we have a pressure. And actually that pressure that they get is, according to the principle of King Center, it's actually called a creative tension. But you are creating that creative tension for them to, agree and come to a resolution with it, right? And after this, the sixth step is called reconciliation. And what is actually reconciliation? you cannot, after they agreed to your terms and and the injustice that they were inflicting, you were able to overcome that. Now you have to make sure that that whatever broken relationship, whatever broken things, you need to restore with them, right? Reconcile with them, because at the end you have to work together, maybe as a college management, as someone who wants to start an SRHR club. So this was a little long. I should have kept it short.
Emma, you had your hand up. Would you like to add anything?
It's still Jana here, sorry. I just wanted to kind of ask, basically when you have the discussions and negotiations, it's good, it's very productive when both parties are open, even if they have very opposing ideas. But usually when we end up having to have discussions or negotiations, it's one party has a demand or a request, and the other party is totally adamant about rejecting it, or totally blind to whatever data or statistics we come up with, even anything emotional or anything else. They're very, I think, stubborn, and they stick to their own beliefs. What would you be able to do for people like that? Because even when you do engage in peaceful protests, they will not engage in those things, because they will not look at the social media. They will try to avoid all of that. They will actually be, I think, more forced to look at other propaganda that support their own beliefs. So I was just wondering how we can kind of use non-violence to be able to get these type of people to be more open-minded, even if they don't agree to us. So I was just wondering how you would go about that.
Thank you, Jana. I think it's actually a valid question, because it is always possible, and then I think we have always come across people like that, who are very stubborn, who will not budge even if there's a million pressures on them to do otherwise. But and honestly, I think because racism was so rampant, and especially more than racism, it was segregation, because and then segregation is a form of racism. If I give you a case scenario, mostly in the southern states of US, there was rampant segregation, which means that there would be two different schools, two different classrooms, one for the white children and one for the African American Black children over there, right? And it's a way of segregating people. There would be certain restaurants now, Black people are not allowed to come and dine over there, and these were systems that were so hard to change. And so many African American people who actually were frustrated with this, they actually engaged in violence never there. So not all of them were peaceful. Actually, some of them took guns against these, and and it was very emotional for me, because I actually saw. I had to for my fellowship, I had to visit so many different museums to learn about these things. And some museums, there were live simulation of how it feels to sit in a restaurant as a Black person, and then you will be wearing an earphone, and this earphone in such a manner you can hear people talking to you, and then someone will say it in your ear that I'll kill you if you don't get out of this. I'll like these things, and then they will bang on the table, and everything is a live simulation. So was that much of hatred and ingrained racism was there, but still those things ultimately changed, and that's because primarily people like Martin Luther King decided that violence against them is never going to be a solution, because an eye for eye, we say, leads to the world being blind, right? And I know, like you said, for example, when you said that how, despite everything, if the other party doesn't change, but they, and the thing is, I think the whole principle is about keep trying, because a simple case that I would share that happened in the US, I shared about the bus segregation, protesting against that bus company, just that one bus company in Montgomery, which is in Alabama, is a southern state. It took 380 days to say So for 380 days, the whole community of Black people in Montgomery have totally boycotted the bus and the bus company. And then and for 380 days, they did not budge. They did not change their mind, and they were stubborn. But ultimately, because they realized that Black people, as much as white people in that town were contributing to their revenue, they went under a serious loss. And when the company was almost drowning, they had no other choice but to uh, listen to them and change their ways, and that was a win. But um, so I hope I answered, and if anyone wants to comment something on this, please feel free.
I'll just come in and say that I'm being conscious of time. We're very much at the 1 hour mark.
uh,
And we still have one more group to go. So group number 2 was Yande and Kilizam, if you would like to share. And after that, if we would like to stay on for a discussion, I mean, most welcome. I'm happy to stay on and to keep the room open. So over to you, group number 2.
Hello, can you hear
Hey,
me?
Ande. Yes, we can.
Hi, Han. Sorry, my network is a little unstable, so let me know if you stop hearing my voice level. Okay. So in our group, we were 3 people, including Dichamandi, and the topic was to do with the polluting of the river by a company. And it's interesting because when I joined the conversation, I was just like, let's just shame them, let's just shame them and bully them. And Dichamandi kept saying, no, it's the non-violence approach, and I'm like, no, I'm done waiting on the sidelines. We have to do something about it. So yeah, he had to take a full good 5 minutes to calm me down. And then we talked about the non-violent key approach. I really liked what Kile had to say about introducing an alternative option for the company, because these businesses, sometimes they're not evil. They just they dump the water because they don't know what else to do with that dirty water, maybe. So if we introduce options for them, that maybe there's something that you can do, or even from the policy or government, kinale, like this is where the water can go and this is what can be done, and if options then they will be well informed. But before any of that, like Dishwan, they kept saying in the group that we need to gather information and we need to know what is, like, how much water is being dumped. Like we need to know cost to go and all. But for me, I kept saying that we need to find people who are passionate about this, because right now we live in a society where everything is an issue. Everything is issue, and after some time you get really tired, and you don't know what to focus on, because there's gender, there's violence, there's alcohol, there's drugs. So if we find, if it's online or it can be anywhere, but a group of passionate people who are just focused on environment, then that could be the first step, right? People who are just focused on the first environment issues, and then within among ourselves, what we can do is gather information, like water through what is the impact on the environment, do our research and have everything ready. Then you start the conversation, and then the other steps can follow. But I also really loved what Kilia had to say, that we can also offer some approaches to the businesses, saying that maybe this is what can be done. So it's all about communication and understanding, and not really from the point of view of accusing each other, but very like mindful listening, which I'm totally against, because I feel like you just have to go. And this one, he kept saying, if you think like that, then everyone's going to think like that, and everyone is going to think that they are right, and then there's going to be a fight, and it's going to be non-ending. But sometimes it's really tiring to just sit back and have this long discussion and conversation. Meanwhile, the water is just being dumped in the river, and yeah. So that's what we discussed, and then yeah, that was very short discussion for us. More. Did I miss anything, Dishwandi?
No, you're good. That was really nice, actually. So yeah, I think nothing much to add from my side on this. And we've been the Namge, can you take it forward?
Yeah, I was also thinking about how, because I work in climate, the big fight right now is against the fossil fuel industry. And, there are many, many approaches. I think there would be some parties who would believe in the nonviolent approach and say, look, we have to help these companies transition because, you know, we cannot demand them to just shut off their plans because a large chunk of population will literally freeze in winter without burning fossil fuels, or that there are so many livelihoods and jobs at risk. But then there are also parties who say, no, we need radical change because a lot of governments continue to incentivize and in fact subsidize fossil fuels, which keep benefiting the big companies, and they have like billions of dollars in their yearly profits. Then you have the people from the industry who are, yes, they're working in petroleum engineering, oil rigging, whatever, but you know, they're aware of the issues, and then they really want to be part of the solution. So yeah, it's I think things are not as black and white sometimes, and completely agree with Yande also. You know, sometimes naming and shaming does work, but if we're taking a principled approach, I think what we're doing here today is to understand how we can do it in a coherent manner and where we can see that this has worked really well. So, you know, I really enjoyed the session today, and there's so much to learn. Anything else from anyone? The floor is open, and yeah, we can stay on for maybe 10 more minutes or so. If there's nothing, we can also end here.